Okay. All right, firstly, thank you very much to the organisers for inviting myself here to represent Myra and Myra's views. Fascinating presentation from Dom, and I'm sure we'll take lots of examples of sort of perseverance and dogged determination that we'll all benefit from as we're trying to develop EV technologies. First of all, I've got 15 minutes or so to run through some slides which give you an overview of my views and my organisation's views on the challenges that EVs face in terms of going to mass market and increasing their volume sales. It's based on a lot of facts, a lot of data, and a lot of sort of industry norms and knowledge. So open up for discussion afterwards. And I think it'd be great just to quickly give my organisation a very brief plug. We are an old organisation, 67 years based in the UK, centre of excellence for R&D in the automotive industry. And for an extensive period of time, we've been developing technologies for electric vehicles. So we've got a great range of activities and experience and first-hand knowledge in EVs, the technology and the challenges they face. And it's great to see significant investment and R&D activity across the space, either with the developing products that are going to market now, or a number of research activities we're involved with Cardiff University and other partners, where we're looking for significant steps in terms of improving the technology and capability. And it's a very exciting time for all of us that are in this industry. So, brief overview. The opportunities for EVs, I'm sure most of us will be aware, which I want to put into context. The challenges to enter the market, and they're varied from technical, regulatory, and consumer markets. A brief view of the EVs already out there. I'm not interested in trying to focus on the technology, but I want to highlight some issues that you see in terms of disparity, in terms of cost in particular, or price. And then I want to mention on the role that EVs face as part of the wider sustainable mobility agenda. And that's something that I hold very dear to my heart, and I know my organisation does as well. Because developing EVs is not the full solution. We have to develop a means of sustainable mobility. So the challenges for the automotive industry. None of this will be news to you. Basically, the population is growing, the demand for vehicles is growing. There's significant competition across the space between the existing and well-established European OEMs and those emerging from Eastern Asian markets, China and India, etc. Our consumers are demanding more, ever-increasing expectations in terms of integration and in terms of smart technologies. And we're also being pushed by legislation, so CO2, safety, noise, etc. And there's a huge challenge for us involved in the industry as to can we meet all of these demands whilst also ensuring that we have a low-carbon means of transportation, we minimise environmental impact, and we can have some impact on images like you see here on the right-hand side, which are typical from any urban environment. Now, cities are growing, more people are moving from the countryside to the cities, the population is growing, middle classes are growing, and everybody's looking for various forms of transportation. And I see all too often in Seoul, Shanghai, Buenos Aires, images like this, and I live and breathe that every day, and it's hell. So, drivers, once again, none of this will be news to you, and many of you will be probably involved in these. We have those that are emissions related, so those with regards to reducing fleet average CO2 and general transport CO2, short term and long term. Reducing the impact that transportation has on society, whether it be noise or pollution or emissions. Particulates, interestingly, they were in the press last week with the WHO's opinion on the carcinogenic impact of diesel particulates. And then we have congestion-related targets as well. So not only can we find a low-carbon means of transportation, i.e. maybe an electric vehicle solution, but also one that's very efficient and intelligent and allows us to get more and more out of the infrastructure. And that's a significant issue for us all. Some data. So I picked a particularly optimistic piece of data. There are numerous reports out there. This is an A.T. Kearney report. As you're probably well aware of, a few years ago, worldwide average is roughly an 80-20 split between diesel and gasoline, or gasoline and diesel. And the EVs, HEVs, and alternative fuel vehicles are in the minority, in the margin. The long-term view, and this is generated, and I say optimistic, shows that typically across the, sort of the main three sort of regions of the world, you have roughly 50% and above of the vehicle fleet operating on conventional fossil fuel vehicles. And then the remainder is made up of a mix of hybrids, gas, and EV or plug-in hybrid solutions. Typically the numbers there are sort of 8, 9, 10%. I'd say that's definitely on the optimistic side of the reports I've seen over the last 3, 4, 5 years. But it shows that there is market, and if you particularly look at the first bullet point, where we see that the need for transportation is forecast to potentially double, and you imagine how the impact that has on our cities and our urban environment, then much of the growth can be taken up through EVs or alternatively fuel vehicles. And this also plays into the theme and the general perception that one sees in society, where it's now becoming potentially acceptable in the short or the near future, where you'll have a diesel to run between Cardiff and Glasgow, but you'll have an electric vehicle to pop into town and do your shopping. So you choose your form of mobility to meet your requirements. And the numbers at the bottom suggest that the EV market between now, 2020 and 2030, ranges from 5 to 36 million. Now, the fact that those numbers that are pulled out of various sort of credible reports are so variable, for me, highlights the unknown. We just cannot, I don't think, commit to what volumes we expect to see in the market. It's very much going to be driven by technology, things like the smart grid catching up, price of these vehicles, and also government has a key part to play in this with legislation. So, challenges in the auto industry. Okay, adversity to risk. Many OEMs have ploughed billions into infrastructure, into production facilities, into comprehensive 15, 20-year model plans. I would say this was definitely the case maybe 5 years ago, but I think in the last 3 years or so, there's been a significant change in the industry. Now, people like Renault and Nissan are really starting to lead the way in terms of adopting their business model to try and make EVs more viable. And rather, there are different models. Rather than just purchasing a vehicle, there are various lease hire schemes on things like batteries or the entire vehicle. Tech readiness, batteries are a common theme. Are they durable enough? Will they be safe? Concerns over resources. I was listening to Radio 4 this morning in the car, and there's an article about how China is the only country in the world which is really gearing up for the commodities shortage that apparently, and I believe, we will all see. And they're buying up mountains and mines and large patches of territory across the world so they can get hold of their lithium and their rare earth magnets. Infrastructure. We currently have a dumb grid. We don't have a smart grid. There's lots of conversation about a smart grid. Will the charging infrastructure meet our requirements? Will it maximise the opportunities that EVs face and EVs present in terms of acting as a temporary means of storage? Charging points. I can't remember how many gasoline and diesel conventional fuel stations there are in the UK, but it's something in the region of 20, 30,000 in one of the reports I saw. There's certainly not that many charging points. They're in the hundreds, probably thousands. They're not in the tens of thousands. Legacy. Obviously, we have all this investment in existing vehicle and engine and powertrain production plants and technology. To really get the most out of EVs, we need a fresh approach. And we're starting to see that in some of the concepts and some of the new vehicles that are proposed to be coming to market in the next couple of years, where they're ditching the conventional vehicle layout. They don't have all the legacy issues over the design of the chassis and one thing or another. And the Twizy outside, I think, is a great example. Long development time. Conventional vehicle can potentially go from sort of blank sheet of paper into market in 3 years, nearer to if you're really, really aggressive. The evidence and the data we see seems to suggest that more like 5 years is the case with EVs. And a lot of this is over development of the battery and the motor controllers and new motor technologies, all these emerging technologies that have only been in automotive in the last sort of 10 years or so, unless you wind back to the early 20th century. A shift in the market, now EVs becoming acceptable, and in fuel prices. It was very apparent 12 months ago as fuel prices in the forecourt started to rocket up that EVs started to become more talked about and discussed in media and in the mainstream. long term, okay, we're currently going through a bit of a dip, but long term, crude oil is only going to go up. It's only going to go one way. That will surely benefit the EV sector in terms of EVs becoming more attractive, etc. And from a consumer perspective, range anxiety, that's always top of the list. Nobody wants to be caught short on the M1 or M6 halfway to the final destination. But that also then generates a discussion, well, EVs are certainly fit for a certain purpose. Having an EV to pop in and out of town, perfect. You're not going to use an EV to go across the country. Then you look at things like a range extender or a very efficient diesel. The variation as well in battery performance, hot day, cold day, whether we've got 4 passengers, lots of luggage, the age of the battery. These are concerns we just don't have as conventional gasoline and diesel drivers. Cost of ownership, there's a lot of variation in the sales price, and I've got a slide on that coming up. Usage, charge time. Vehicles now used to be, particularly with my lifestyle, if I've got to leave it parked up for 12 hours while it charges, because there's no fast charger available. Many of us need transportation at the click of a finger. Maybe we have to adapt our lifestyles to it. And in safety, there's plenty of scare stories, and there's plenty of bits of media snippets now and again where a vehicle's gone up in smoke. There was only 2-3 months ago when a Chevy Volt, or GM Volt, burst into flames after a crash test when the vehicle had been parked after the crash test in the forecourt. I think they had a thermal event about 3 weeks after the crash test had been completed. So lots of issues. Are the consumers interested? So this is a piece of work done by Deloitte where they surveyed a global slice of the market on whether they would be willing to purchase an electric vehicle. And basically, the small blue piece of the pie and the large green piece of the pie are those that potentially would buy an electric vehicle. The numbers vary quite a lot, from Japan, sort of less than half, up to China, where nearly everybody said they would buy an electric vehicle. But would they buy an electric vehicle if they knew about the performance, the cost, the one or two other issues? And having screened the data, Deloitte determined that only 4% potentially, EVs would only be able to penetrate 4% of the market once consumers had decided, well, am I prepared to pay a bit more money? Am I prepared to accept these deficiencies? I think this data really rams it home. Across those 4 parts of the world, typically more than 50% said, I'll have an EV, but I'm not prepared to pay any more for it. Some said, yeah, I'll pay a little bit more. And then when you look at, you take the European figures, €3,000, which is clearly the benchmark for some of the more expensive, the benchmark price premium for some the more expensive EVs, only a handful of people are prepared to make that extra investment. And then it doesn't help when we have complete discontinuity and no harmonisation in incentive schemes. You can only look at the numbers there. Australia doesn't give you anything. Japan will give you equivalent of $14,000 if you towards your EV price. So we need some harmonisation there. And then if we look at the RRP for some of the vehicles that are available, I appreciate that these numbers may have changed marginally and they don't include the incentives. Now from the Vauxhall Ampera, which is at the top end at sort of circa £37,000, down to the Renault at 22.5, you've got nearly £15,000 difference there. And when you look at the smaller vehicles, you've got the Smarts, which are circa £16,000, £17,000, and then the Citroën, Mitsubishi and Peugeot, which are all very similar, in the region of sort of 26, 27, 28. So there's a lot of disparity. Add a complete different angle to this as well. I firmly believe, from what I've been involved with over the last few years, that the drivers that influence the younger generation when they come to purchase their vehicles are very different to what it may have influenced you and I 20 years ago when we bought our first vehicles. Certainly would have been the case for me and maybe some of my predecessors. It's performance, style, agility, handling. Now there's other issues. Clearly the green agenda is important. People are much more conscious about what they're purchasing. But there's the smart area as well. You may have already seen some recent adverts for, I think it's Peugeot, where you can do your Facebook and your tweeting and stuff whilst you're in your car. So this kind of integration with social media, etc., is an interesting driver. And then the whole smartphone issue. The smartphone, the comms providers, O2, Vodafone, etc., their view is that they own you at home and they own you at work, but they don't own you in your vehicle. We are gradually seeing through various mediums that smartphones potentially could own you in the vehicle. An iPad could effectively replace your dashboard. And we've been involved in projects where that has been the case. So you just stick in your iPad, that is your dashboard. You can configure your dashboard to look however you like. And whilst you're driving, you can make your phone calls, you can see tweets coming up on one thing or another. It's a really different driver. And I personally believe, and many of my colleagues do, this is going to influence who's buying EVs in the next 5, 10 years. Different market. And we need to accommodate this. We crashed. Okay. And following on from that, we're seeing rapid changes in disruptive business model. The data's a bit old, but at least 12 months ago, when I looked at the App Store, there was over 400 apps for travel, ranging from GPS, speedometers, one thing another, vehicle performance monitors. There's a huge new emerging market in terms of how you can influence people in the vehicle and how that can be configured into the vehicle. I very much believe that OEMs need to, and they are actually, or some are, considering this when they develop their vehicles. You've got people like Google who have a fantastic autonomous vehicle. I haven't been in it myself, but I've spoken to some people who have been in it, and they've literally driven around Las Vegas, driver sat in the front, and he spent the entire time turning around, speaking to the person in the back. And this vehicle drives normally through the city centre, makes aggressive lane change manoeuvres, parks. It is apparently incredible. And if you get the opportunity, certainly drive it. And then programs we've been involved with, such as GEVCO here on the bottom right, where it's a very unconventional model. You're effectively designing a white goods, which is manufactured locally, under license, is styled for the local market, for the local needs, and uses local technology. Very different sort of way to look in at the industry. I'll quickly move on because I'm conscious of time. I'd like to make a point about sustainable mobility. EVs will play a key part in this. So sustainable mobility is, and various iterations of these two words, basically tries to capture our ability to meet the needs of the population in terms of mobility, transportation and lifestyle, and how we do that in a sustainable manner. And it includes everything such as low carbon technologies, intelligent transport systems, alternate fuels, etc. It's a really important theme, and we're starting to see it across governments, across political circles, and across industry. If you take the bottom right-hand corner, which is intelligent transport systems, we now call it intelligent mobility. This addresses many of the sustainable issues. So things like energy supply, how you can increase your journey efficiency. So I need to get from A to B. I pull up my iPhone, I need to get from A to B. It says, right, walk here, catch that train, get in a taxi, get that bus. It's all mapped out for me. It's all organised. It's a very efficient means of travel. Gets more out of the infrastructure rather than me getting in my car and getting stuck on the motorway. Environmental impact. Vehicles that change from, say, 4 cylinders to 2 cylinders when they come into a city area, or you limit the maximum speed of the vehicle. These technologies are available and are starting to appear in some areas. Road user safety. So I mentioned speed limitation. Urban congestion. So very active sort of sat-nav systems that redirect you and are very aware of the situation ahead. And they're not gathering data from infrastructure, they're potentially gathering data from other iPhones and other vehicles. So the data is very live and very up to date. And EVs will play a key part of this, particularly in the telematics space. Because if you're driving an EV, you will want to know where the next charging point is, and you'll definitely want to have a slot booked so when you pull up, you can plug your vehicle in, get a coffee, and then carry on with your journey. No, not having to drive around for hours trying to find a parking spot or a charging slot. And there's a good piece of work by Frost & Sullivan that really focuses on this and highlights the fact that telematics, intelligent mobility, and EVs really need to integrate. There's a great opportunity for us there. So from the EV space, if we can really get to grips with the intelligent mobility thing, I think that will certainly help the success or the opportunities. Finally, and where's Mara involved in all this? Well, we have an active technology road mapping program, and we have a number of programs ongoing. Development of battery systems, okay, lots of people are doing that. we're involved in, we're not involved in the chemistry, we're involved in the, sort of the architecture and the control systems. There's lots of interesting opportunities in metal air batteries and other concepts going forwards that we're investigating. Programs such as MSIS, where we're looking at next generation motor technology and closer integration with transmission systems as well, so we can get more out of the motor, make it more condensed. Pure, which is basically a black box solution for auxiliary power units. We have a very efficient APU integrated with a motor solution as well. So that can drop into various electric vehicles to give you your range extension. Footlight, that's an example of intelligent transport systems where we're monitoring driver behavior and trying to educate drivers to drive more efficiently and more green. We have similar programs that look at vehicle-to-vehicle integration and vehicle-to-infrastructure integration. And then autonomous vehicles, vehicles that do the driving for you. So they take the decisions for you, they control their speed, their braking, and they basically control where you go. So conclusions, deployment of EVs is necessary, we all know this. It's definitely one part of the solution to the whole low carbon issue and the CO2 issue. However, the conventional business model will have to change. Existing OEMs need to adapt their business models and their products to consider some of the items I mentioned, and some definitely are, we see it. We certainly need to ensure that EVs are integrated into the wider intelligent mobility agenda, because that will certainly be something that will help them be successful. And it's actually necessary if they're to be adopted by the market. Look at harnessing a consensus on incentive schemes. I find it quite interesting why pan-Europe, the incentive schemes are so different. And also EVs to target certain markets. So the Y generation, as we call it, are different to our forefathers, and vehicles need to consider that. And finally, we're involved in base vehicles and technologies, intelligent transport systems, so really interesting time. Okay, so I've run. Thank you very much.